Michigan Out of Doors Online is brought to you in part by Tri-County Logging. Experienced in sustainable forestry practices, Tri-County Logging can help you manage your property by keeping your woods healthy and generate income. Serving southern and mid-Michigan for nearly 50 years, TriCountyLogging.com.
Hi everybody, welcome to Michigan Out of Doors. We've got a brand new show in store for you this week, and it's all about using our natural resources that are available to us right here in our great state. Jordan will show us how to make maple syrup, which is something a lot of people are taking advantage of right now in Michigan. And I'll introduce you to a man who's brewing his own beer using water he scooped out of each of the Great Lakes. It's a pretty interesting story. You won't want to miss that one. And we'll even have time for a bragging board on this week's show, so you stay tuned. I'm Jenny Silik, and it's time for Michigan Out of Doors.
From the first spring rains to the soft summer breeze, dancing on the pine forest floor, the autumn colors catch your eyes. Here come the crystal winter skies. It's Michigan, Michigan Out of Doors.
What a beautiful day in the woods.
Someday our children all will see this is their finest legacy, the wonder and the love of Michigan. As the wind comes whispering through the trees, the sweet smell of nature's in the air. From the Great Lakes to the quiet stream, shining like a sportsman's dream, it's a love of Michigan we all share.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by Country Smokehouse, a sportsman's meat processor and Michigan destination since 1988, offers a variety of homemade smoked meats and Michigan-made products in-store and online. The Country Smokehouse features an outdoor barbecue and bar. Details at countrysmokehouse.com. By Green Mark Equipment. Green Mark Equipment is a John Deere dealership network in southwest Michigan and northern Indiana. Green Mark provides sales and services to farmers, commercial businesses, large property owners, and homeowners. Information about pricing and products available can be found online at greenmarkequipment.com. By AnglerQuest Pontoons. AnglerQuest is a Michigan-based company building boats designed for comfort and fishing functionality. For more information, anglerquestpontoons.com. By Polarcraft Boats, offering riveted and welded boats for the outdoor enthusiast. Whether you're targeting fish or waterfowl, Polarcraft Boats have several models to choose from that keep you high and dry. For more information, polarcraft.com.
We're Katie and Brian Zarna. We have Zach and Zoe, our two kids that love to come out and help us do syrup. We are in Sand Lake, Michigan. We've been doing this for about 13 years, and we've been in our sugar shack for, this is our fourth season that we're doing that. Originally we started boiling in our kitchen, and that was just a hot, humid mess. And so my husband got an evaporator with 3 different pans that we used to have to flip back and forth. And we were in a lean-to back then, which is in a different area, our property. And then we built the sugar shack. My husband cut down all the logs, and we ended up doing, hauling the logs all here and building it up. It took 3 years to build, but that first year it was so much better being in the nice and warmth instead of a lean-to, where you were exposed to most of the elements outside, where it's snow, rain, wind, sleet, all that stuff.
So we're here at our sugar bush, just down the road from our property, and we're collecting maple sap to turn it into maple syrup. And we have lines set out to all the trees. A lot of people collect on buckets. We chose to go with lines a few years ago because collecting 100 or 150 buckets is a lot of work, and this makes things a whole lot easier for us. Tapping with lines is very similar to buckets. We get a group of trees, maybe 5 to 20 trees in a group, and drill a hole, put a spile in, a tap in the tree, and then we connect the spile down to the tubing, which is strung between all the trees. And the idea is, as long as you have a little bit of a gradient, about 3% or a 3-foot drop over 100 feet, that sap will not only flow downhill, but it'll create a bit of a vacuum in the tubing and continue to pull sap out of the tree long after maybe a typical bucket system with the tap may have frozen over. So this keeps the trees running longer into the evening or longer through a bit of a cold snap, and it just makes things easier on us, right? Rather than collecting 100 different buckets and having to carry them through the woods, we have 12 different collection sites where we pull the side-by-side up to and use a pump to pump it all in.
Having lines set up to collect sap is certainly convenient, but it does require some planning and some research before you hit the woods.
So we've experimented over the years with 2 different tubing sizes. There's most typical are 5/16 and 3/16 for a kind of a setup like us. Within the last 2 years, we switched everything to the smaller diameter 3/16, just because I've heard from friends that maybe that produces a little bit more of a vacuum, a pull on the sap. And we've seen good results with it the last couple of years, so we're in the process of switching over all of our lines to the smaller diameter 3/16. But really, you can't go wrong with either of them, I don't think. It just makes things so much easier. How we determine where we tap on the tree, a lot of it has to do with the elevation of our property. Because we're running lines and we do have to have a bit of a slope to them, sometimes we have to tap higher on kind of the starting tree and lower on the finishing tree. But we have collection barrels that are 3.5 foot tall, so we have to make sure that we can still get the line into those barrels. So there's really no rule of thumb as to how high or how low you should tap. A lot of people will say kind of waist height, chest height, but you just kind of do, you make it work for the setup that you have. So some of my trees are tapped 7 feet tall. Sometimes when I tap, there's a lot of snow on the ground, so in the springtime, when it's time to pull the taps, I actually have to get a ladder or a step stool out to pull that last tap because it's up there, 8.5 feet or so, and it's kind of hard to reach.
There's several different opinions out there about where you should put the actual tap on the tree, so I asked Brian what he thought about the topic.
So as far as where to tap on the tree, I think the south side is probably better to tap just because it's going to get more sun and it's going to warm up a little sooner. In the day, thaw out the line, the drop lines a little bit sooner. Really we just tap kind of wherever we can. We've been tapping these same trees now for 13 years, so you don't want to tap right next to or right up above or below last year or previous year's tap marks, because that's some dead wood there. It doesn't really have the sap flowing through it, so you're supposed to tap a few inches over and a few inches up or down. But you do that for 13 years with kind of the same setup of lines, you start running out of places to tap. So sometimes you got to tap higher, sometimes you have to tap lower, just to find a good section of the tree that is going to produce sap for you.
After collecting a couple 100 gallons of sap, we headed back to the sugar shack to learn a little more about what happens there.
Our evaporator for our maple syrup is actually in 3 different sections. It's called a continuous flow pan. The sap comes in the one side and it flows through, and as we heat it up with wood, all of the water evaporates into the air and it leaves the sugar. Sap is typically around 2% sugar, the rest is all water. So in order to make maple syrup, you gotta have a really, really hot fire and keep that going. You keep adding sap as it boils down, and then eventually it'll come to syrup. The magic number is right around 219 for syrup, but we also have a hydrometer that checks the thickness of the sugar, which that's a little bit more reliable than the temperature. We do have to add about wood probably every 5 to 10 minutes just to keep that fire really hot, because you want to get it as hot as you can and keep it as hot as you can.
What do you like about doing maple syrup?
What I like the most about doing maple syrup is getting the logs from the shack over there and bringing them over here and driving the quad around all through the woods and trails.
Nice. Do you like maple syrup?
Yes. I do like the maple syrup. It's one of the best parts.
My favorite part of making maple syrup is getting the sap from all the buckets with my mom and dad.
And what else?
And eating the candies from it.
Although the process may seem somewhat simple, there's a lot more that goes into maple syrup than you might think. And if you're looking for more information, you can check out the Michigan Maple Syrup Cookers Facebook group. Special thanks to the Zarna family for having me out to their sugar shack and for teaching us all a little bit about what goes in to making maple syrup.
Well, I don't think we've ever done a beer brewing story here on the TV show, but this next story is pretty unique. We met a man who's taking a little bit of water out of each of the Great Lakes to brew his own beer for his own personal use at home. We thought it was pretty interesting. We wanted to check it out and share it with you.
Today we are brewing a batch of beer from Lake Huron. I had gone up to Oscoda recently to collect the water from the lake to make the beer. And I had started a project back in October where I wanted to brew a batch of beer from a Great Lake, and we were in a vacation in the Upper Peninsula. We took water from Lake Superior, and I made a batch of beer from Lake Superior, and that was our Superior Northern Ale. It came out very nice. You'll see some of the bottles with the decoration and the waxing on the top, and when we were driving back home, my wife had come up with the idea of, why don't we just make a batch of beer from all 5 Great Lakes? And this is where this kind of was the genesis and the story began.
We headed out to Roger's garage to start brewing the Lake Huron batch of beer.
Now we're going to take the actual raw lake water and we are going to pour it through this filter. And I've created this filter and used it a few times. And basically we have 4 different kinds of filtration media. I have a large gross filter pad, if you will. Underneath that is a layer of a polishing pad, which will trap some of the finer sediments. Under that, there is an activated charcoal pad, which will remove any further contaminations that are dissolved within the water. And then there's a small packet of zeolite that I put in there, which is designed to remove arsenic and any heavy metals. One more polishing pad, and then finally it comes out through the bottom. So that will generally filter anything that we need out of this water to make it suitable for consumption. So next step is we're going to take 2 gallons of this water. We're going to put it into a pot on the stove. We're going to add our grains, and what we're going to do today is a partial mash. So we're going to use some extract malts to make the beer, but we're also going to put in some extra grains that are going to give it a more complex flavor. It's also going to help with the conversion of the starches to sugar, which is what the yeast is going to utilize to make alcohol. So we're going to put this on the stove. We're going to boil it or simmer it about 155 for about an hour. After that's done, we're going to come out here. We're going to rinse our muslin bag, add everything from that, which is called your wort, into the remaining water, and then we're going to start the brewing process. The start of the process is that we were making a partial mash today, which means you're normally just going to, you can have extract or full grain. This is kind of a hybrid in between. So we took the grains, we put it in about 2 gallons of water, made a wort, if you will, and from there we take that wort out here, we take the remaining lake water, put it in our boil pot, add the wort, which was the chemicals that were extracted from the grain bag, add it to that, boil it for an hour. We go on a certain hop schedule to add a malt schedule and any adjunct things that you're going to throw in there. After that, we cool it down, we add our yeast, put it in the carboy, and we let it ferment.
Helping Roger today were his wife Mary Ann and their friend Tom Van Koningsveld. The beer brewing process is quite technical and involves a lot of science and a lot of patience for the finished product.
So once the actual brewing is done, we're going to pitch our yeast into it in the carboy, and then it takes about a week to do a primary fermentation. After that week, you're going to take it and you are going to transfer that liquid off of the yeast cake that's at the bottom and all the trub that falls down, which is the yeast and the hops and everything else. And you're going to transfer that into a secondary carboy for secondary fermentation, where it will then sit for an additional week, potentially longer. If you're going to add different flavorings, you can let them sit to gains a little bit more complexity. But usually it's about a week after that, and then you can put it in the bottle. Once it's in the bottle, it takes about another 2 weeks to carbonate it. Some people let it sit a little bit longer, but so from brew day to drinking it, you're looking at about 30 days.
Back in January, Roger had collected water from the Sleeping Bear Dunes area and added Traverse City cherries to the brew for a cherry wheat beer. As they got prepped to bottle this batch, Roger talked about how this whole idea was born into reality.
So I would say the origination of this whole idea was, I believe it was in 2019, I was lucky enough to win a lottery tickets to go visit the original Camp Crystal Lake. It was the filming location of the original 1980 film, Friday the 13th. And I was able to stay the night there, which was a super amazing experience. I fortunately got invited back the next year, which I did go back and ask them if I could take 8 gallons of water. And I think a lot of people were amazed that someone had the idea to do something like that. And I guess brewing for so long, you're always used to, you have to get water to brew, and you need 8-9 gallons of water. And I was like, well, hey, Camp Crystal Lake, that's a pretty famous lake. I just think it'd be cool. I could take some water and make beer out of Crystal Lake. It'd just be a great idea. And it just resonated, and it went viral, and people just loved it. And I just said, I live in Michigan, and we're surrounded by some absolutely legendary waters. Why not take that and start doing one out of a Great Lake? And then we did Lake Superior, and then my wife came up with the idea, and it's kind of growing from there. I enjoy beer, and I think what I got into making it was approximately 20 years ago, and I mean, back then it was your Miller Lite, your Bud Light, your Coors Light. It was just your basic Pilsner beers. And when the craft brew industry really got its legs underneath it and started, I realized there was actually beer that can actually taste very, very good, and you can start to customize your grain bill to create a flavor that is really perfect and ideal for your flavor taste. And that really appealed to me since I've basically been a cook and a chef my entire life. So again, that's just so I really got into it and really studied the different grains and the different malts, the different hops, and how they all interact together. And I was able to create beers that were some of the best beers that I thought tasted the greatest I've ever had. So that was really what got me into it, was the ability to really enjoy a beer that was basically crafted for me by me.
There is one very common question Roger gets when people see his one-of-a-kind beers.
Where can I buy them? They are not for sale. These are just for gifts for friends and family and personal consumption. It's a hobby that I enjoy doing. I love doing this. It's just something that really, it's a passion thing that I have for it. And I never really want to take it to that step of marketing and selling it, because it's fun and it's a joy. It's a love that I have. And when I think you take that and make it a work, make it a job situation, you lose the passion and the joy out of it. And I don't ever want to lose that. So I just keep doing it and giving it away to friends and family and just enjoying it, having people over, and just having a good time with it. And that's what Brew Day is all about.
Roger really puts a lot of TLC into every batch of beer he brews, and from his label designs to the hand-painted wax stamp on top, these beer bottles are works of art. And the tasty refreshments inside are just one more way to enjoy our Great Lakes right here in Michigan's Out of Doors. Thank you so much for joining us this week for Michigan Out of Doors. Make sure you stay tuned in upcoming weeks. Actually, if you're watching this on Thursday night, we are in Grand Rapids at the Ultimate Sports Show recording our Big Buck Night West. And both Big Buck Nights East and West will be airing in upcoming weeks here on the show. If you'd like to see where we are and where we're headed next and maybe learn a little bit about the show, you can always check us out online. Our website is MichiganOutofDoorsTV.com, and we're on all the social media platforms at Michigan Out of Doors TV. If we don't see you in the woods or on the water, we'll see you right back here next week on your PBS station.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by.
Do you dream of somewhere bigger than your backyard? You can get there with Greenstone. Whether you want to hunt, fish, hike, or just watch the sunset, we're ready to help you own your place in the great outdoors. To learn more, visit greenstonefcs.com.
By Alta Equipment Company, providing sales, rentals, service, and parts because uptime matters. From earth moving to landscaping and light construction, Alta offers over 50 brands across 7 Michigan locations to serve you. More information online or 844-GO-2-ALTA. By RBM Jigs, a Michigan-based company serving ice fishing anglers around the state and throughout the country. Specializing in ice fishing gear, RBM Jigs manufactures tungsten jigs, soft plastics, and much more. Online at lakeeffectlures.com.
By Showspan, producing consumer shows that include the Ultimate Sports Show in Grand Rapids, over 350 exhibitors, outdoor gear, boats, seminars, Lake Ultimate, and Big Buck Night. The Ultimate Sports Show at the DeVos Place in Grand Rapids.
When I wander far away, a dream stays with me night and day. It's the road that leads to my home state. I am a Michigan man. Changing seasons paint the scene like rainbow trout in a hidden stream. The white-tailed deer in the tall pine trees. I am a Michigan man. I am a Michigan man. Ask where I'm from and I'll show you my hands. Lord above, I love this land. I am a Michigan man. From the Keweenaw down to St. Joe, Kalamazoo, East to Monroe, to St. Marie and back again. I am a Michigan man. I am a Michigan man. Ask where I'm from and I'll show you my hands. Lord above, I love